Hey, go ahead and open to 1 John chapter 3. We're going to keep on moving through 1 John 3 this morning. And I see you, little baby. My children are here, so I'm going to try not to make eyes with them so they don't distract all of you. Hey, speaking of children, so I didn't really plan on this. Is a great opening illustration, actually. The last few days, we've had a really horrible sickness in our house called hand, foot, and mouth disease. And both of my children have it. And one of my older children, well, they're over it now, so don't worry. Them sitting there is not going to hurt you. Had it, okay. But my oldest, everyone's like, it's chairs all of a sudden scoot. Yeah, no, they're all all right. So, but sores in the back of the throat, like can't eat. I mean, just like horrible stuff. So last night, just a little bit of transparency here. We're really just kind of at our wits' end, and Jade and I are just like you can feel like the stress, then you can feel like the angst, and you're just like, I don't know what else to do. Like it's just heads are butting, and it's horrible. And I looked at one of mine, and I said I need you to remember what I told you about being obedient and listening and honoring and loving. Right? I said it's one thing. They tell us that they love us all the time. I love you, Daddy. I love you, Mommy. So I said it's one thing to tell us that you love us, but it's another thing to show us that you love us in the way that you're obedient, in the way that you listen, in the way that you honor us. So you can say it all day long, I told her. I said, but until you actually show it to me, like showing me you love me is what tells me that when you say it, I can believe you, right? You show me. Don't just say it, because words are great, but it doesn't mean anything unless you back it up with actions, right? And so just like literally came to my head just now, because that's exactly what John is saying in this passage that we're getting into. Is like, don't just say it, but like be about loving others. Be about sacrificial love. And so that's where we're going this morning. So out of the previous passage, if you guys are there, 1 John 3, out of the previous passage, it seems like, he kind of ends verse 10 where we were last week with this idea of loving one another, right? And we talked about it kind of seemed out of place a little bit. Like when you look at what he says in verse 10 of chapter 3, right? By this it is evident who are the children of God and who are the children of the devil. Whoever does not practice righteousness is not of God. Cool. Get it. But then like kind of randomly, nor is the one who does not love his brother. Like there's a million other things he could have said, right? Practice righteousness, but make sure you love your brother. There's so many other things. But when you go straight into verse 11, because remember when this was written, there's no punctuation, there's no headings and like breaks. It was all just one continual letter. And so if you go to verse 11, it seems like a really great transition into where he goes next. So when we read, we're going to read 11 through 24, but you think about what he says, right? So children of God is someone who loves their brother. Verse 11, let's read together. And this will be on the screen for you guys too if you don't have your Bible, which is okay. So, for this is the message that you have heard from the beginning, that we should love one another. We should not be like Cain, who was of the evil one and murdered his brother. And why did he murder him? Because his own deeds were evil and his brother's righteous. Do not be surprised, brothers, that the world hates you. We know that we have passed out of death into life because we love the brothers. Whoever does not love abides in death. Everyone who hates his brother is a murderer, and you know that no murderer has eternal life abiding in him. By this we know love, that he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brothers. But if anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? Little children, let us not love in word or talk, but in deed and in truth. But this we shall know, that we are of the truth, and reassure our heart before him. For whenever our heart condemns us, God is greater than our heart, and he knows everything. Beloved, if our heart does not condemn us, we have confidence before God. And whatever we ask, we receive from him, because we keep his commandments and do what pleases him. And this is his commandment, that we believe in the name of his Son, Jesus Christ, and love one another, just as he has commanded us. Whoever keeps his commandments abides in God, and God in him. And by this we know that he abides in us, by the Spirit whom he has given us. So out of that, here's our big idea for this morning. Our big idea is this: a genuine relationship with Jesus is marked by our love for one another. A genuine relationship with Jesus is marked by our love for one another. So John reiterates this reminder that if you remember previously, he talked about how this isn't a new command, right? It's an old one, but it's a new one, but it's not brand new. Like, it was like confusing, like, what are you talking about, John? But it's a command that we saw in the Old Testament. It's a command that we saw really personified through Jesus, which is why it was new in that way. We saw what the kind of love that was taught actually looked like. But he's saying, listen, it's not new. Like, you've been told this, you've been shown this. And then he ties the righteous way of living to those who love. So remember, he's been contrasting like these different groups of people, right? So those who are kind of like seceding from the fellowship, the secession, I don't know how you say it. They're pulling away from the body, and they're trying to pull believers with them, right? We've talked all about that. This is why he writes the letter, and so he's comparing the righteous versus the unrighteous, light versus dark, children of God, children of the devil. Like, there's these two groups of people. Then now he's going to talk about loving and not loving, right? So he's reiterating this, but the righteous, those who live righteously and those who love go hand in hand, because those who are children of God walk righteously and they love like Jesus. So number one, the first kind of thing we see about love is that he says, just don't be like Cain. All right, don't be like Cain. Well, what does he mean, don't be like Cain? Verses 12 and 13. Back in Genesis 4, we see the story of the brothers Cain and Abel. Right? This is one of the first kind of like narratives, stories that we have. Cain brings the Lord an offering from the fruit of the field, it says. And Abel brings an offering of one of the firstborn of his pasture. Scripture says that God had regard for Abel's sacrifice or offering, but he didn't have regard for Cain's offering. And that made Cain really, really angry. And we get a hint at why God rejected Cain's sacrifice in verses 6 and 7 of Genesis 4. It says this, the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it. And after that, Cain's anger overwhelms him, and he ends up killing his brother Abel. And in that short story, God doesn't reject Cain's offering because he doesn't like the offering itself. That's not why he rejects it. He doesn't reject it because he doesn't like the fruit of the field, but he only likes, animals. That's not why he rejected the sacrifice. He rejects it because it says in Genesis that Cain did not do well. He rejected it because he didn't do well. And we have more of a specific explanation in 1 John 3, verse 12, where it says, why did he murder him? Because his own deeds were evil and his brothers were righteous. So the evil that was in his heart was marked by jealousy over God showing his brother favor, which led to extreme anger and hatred, which then led to murder. So in the same way that Cain had evil in his heart, so does the world have evil in its heart, especially towards something that it doesn't understand. Turn over to John 15 real quick. We're going to turn a couple times this morning, but turn to John chapter 15 in your Bible. Again, it'll be on the screen, but John chapter 15, verses 18 through 21. And listen to what it says, verses 18 through 21, John 15. If the world hates you, know that it has hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love you as its own, but because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Remember the word that I said to you, a servant is not greater than its master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they kept my word, they will also keep yours. But all these things they will do to you on account of my name, because they do not know him who sent me. The world does not only hate Jesus because it doesn't know him, but the world hates his followers because they don't understand who God is. And so as Cain had evil in his heart, so the world as well has evil in its heart. But as children of God, we are called to something far different. Don't be like Cain. The Spirit-driven outpouring in our lives must be love. It has to be love. Jesus said that the world would know that we're followers because of our love for one another. That's what sets us apart. That's what the world doesn't understand. How can you love like that when? Cain was consumed by self. It was all about himself, right? He was driven by a desire to be noticed. He wanted to be praised. He wanted to be acknowledged. And when those desires are driven by an evil heart, his response when he didn't get what he deserves was devastating. Right? So when you're self-motivated and there's evil in your heart, then the way in which you behave and the way in which you treat people can have devastating effects. I mean, is that not the world in which we live when you think about that? A self-driven need for approval, my truth is the only truth that matters, forget about everybody else. This one's for the youngins, but a clout-chasing world. How many of you guys are like, what is clout? Okay. Is that even cool to say anymore? I don't know. All right. Ask me later. Ask those kids. They know. Ask them. But we're bombarded with it from every single angle. Like, we're bombarded with this from our world. We buy into the lies that we need to do anything that we can to get to the top. It doesn't matter who we step on. It doesn't matter what happens as long as we get status, as long as we are acknowledged and approved. And this goes completely contrary to the way of Jesus. Don't be like Cain. Instead, in a minute, we'll talk about being like Jesus, but don't be like Cain. Now, John has spent this whole letter, again, contrasting true believers in the young church against those who have left the fellowship, and we're trying to pull others with them. So he's trying to provide clarity around that so that this young church can discern who's who, right? I want you to know when you're interacting with someone, are they a true believer? Are they really a follower of Jesus? Or were they just claiming to be, and now they're trying to pull you into their belief system? Here's another marker of that, right? Like, do they love like Jesus, or do they have evil in their heart like Cain? Another way he says that you can know a person is a true believer, right? Contextually speaking, is he uses the word brother, right? Like brother. You see the breaking of the brothers away, those who claim to be brothers. We'll expand on that idea of brothers in a second, but let's look at verses 14 and 15, okay? 14 and 15 gives us kind of our second thought on what love is, okay? Number 2, love is evidence of a new life, or new life. Love is evidence of new life, verses 14 and 15. So if you go back over to 1 John, chapter 3, 14 and 15. Let's read that together. It says, we know that we have passed out of death into life because we love the brothers. Because we love the brothers. That is evidence of our passing into new life. Whoever does not love abides in death. Everyone who hates his brother is a murderer, and you know that no murderer has eternal life abiding in him. So from death to life, evidenced by our love for one another. That's a marker. That's an evidence of our new life. And it's an interesting statement that John makes in that little section. He says, whoever does not love abides in death. Abides in death. What does that mean, to abide in death? Remember, we've talked about abiding. It doesn't mean to simply remain, right? It means that we have a relationship with something that is giving us life, right? When we abide in God, he is the vine, we are the branch, and we're gaining the source of life from that, well, from the root and then the vine of Jesus, and then we are coming off of that and bearing our own fruit. And so we're bringing us life. We're getting life from it. So if you think about it that way, that abiding means from a life-giving source, then when God is the source, then that life that flows into those who abide in him is holy, right? It's righteous, it's passionate, and it's true. But when death is the source, when we abide in death, when death is the source, then what flows is evil and decay and filth. So to abide in death means to draw from the source of all evil and live out what is being drawn in. So if I'm drawing from evil, and that's what's entering my heart, what's entering my soul, and then what I'm going to put out is whatever I'm pulling from that source. So the way that I live is not going to be reflective of Jesus. It's going to be reflective of the evil. So if I abide there, then what I do will be marked by evil. And the language that John uses in this book and in this passage is really tough. Like, to talk about someone abiding in death, abiding in evil, being a child of the devil. Like, he seems pretty upset when you think about it, how he's calling out these false believers and those who are trying to break apart the church. And then he says, if you don't love your brothers, then you hate them. If you don't love your brother, then you hate him. And if you hate him, it's basically the same as murder. Again, really tough. Where is this coming from? It probably takes you back to a time when Jesus was teaching in the Sermon on the Mount. Remember that John was a disciple of Jesus, and so he walked with him. He sat under his teachings. So he probably was bringing to mind what Jesus said, right? In the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5-7 is where we find that. But during that sermon, Jesus said this, you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder. and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council. Whoever says you fool will be liable to the hell of fire. So Jesus says those who murder will face judgment. And those who are angry with their brother will face the same judgment. Because at the foot of the cross, it's a level playing field, right? Sin is sin is sin. Murder, anger, lying. You bring it to the foot of the cross. Everybody, no matter what you've done or who you are, it's a level playing field there. No one is greater than the next person. No one is worse than the next person in the eyes of God. So murder and anger. Again, like that's crazy to think about the comparison there. But no matter how severe in our human minds, Jesus died to save humanity from the wrath of God and final judgment. So if we're judged because of murder, if we're judged because of anger, then we have to rest in the fact that Jesus saved us from the wrath of God and that judgment that we deserve. The moment we receive the gift of salvation, we become children of God, and we enter into a new life, right? New life, new identity. And part of that identity is an ability to love others like Jesus loved. So now, rather than hating our brothers, being liable to judgment, we love our brothers and sisters. And we do this because it's our natural response of obedience towards God, which is the third thing that we're going to talk about. Actually, that's the fourth thing. That was a horrible transition. That's coming. Number 3. Number 3 is this, verses 16 through 18, all right? Love requires sacrifice. Love requires sacrifice. We have the picture of love in sacrifice in Jesus, all right? So, verse 16 through 18, let's look again. By this we know love, that he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brothers. But if anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? Little children, let us not love in word or talk, but in deed and in truth. This is what I was talking about with my girls last night. Let us not just love in talk, but in deed and in truth. So at first glance, we often talk about this passage, it sounds like we must be willing to lay down our lives physically for our friends, for our brothers, for our sisters, which is true. That's the kind of love that Jesus is talking about and John reiterates. And that's what Jesus said in John 15, right? Greater love has no one than this, that one lays down his life for his friends. Like, there's no greater testament to love than to lay down your life physically for your friend. But he doesn't just mean a physical death when John says it. He continues to kind of unpack this idea of loving the brothers. He moves into the realm of the material and all but says that we should live open-handed with our possessions. That's what he's saying, right? Possessions, material possessions, our financial means. What he says is when you see a brother in need and you don't meet the need, right? So living sacrificially, loving like Jesus, thinking of others first means not just being willing to lay down your life, which is like the extreme example, but like being willing to give anything and everything that you have so that no one goes in need, right? If anyone has the world's goods, material possessions, he closes his heart towards them if he doesn't give it, if he ignores the need, right? How can God's love abide in that person? If you're not willing to share with the brothers and sisters, listen, this doesn't mean that you're just like giving everything away. This doesn't mean that you're just like, here, take this, and you have this, and here's 5 for you. Like, you're not just like willy-nilly just giving all your stuff away. But when a need arises, and if you're able to meet that need with something that you have or with some financial means that you might have, and you look at that person and go, I don't know, like maybe the next person will help you, then you've closed your heart to that person. And then John says, how can God's love really abide in you if that's how you treat other people? Right? And in our initial response sometimes maybe would be that like, I think I could help, but it might hurt. So, hey, let me connect you with this person because I know they can help. Like, I know they have greater means. I know they have more stuff, right? Like, I think I could do it, but it's going to be kind of painful for me. So we kind of pass them off, or like we hope maybe that someone else, like, yeah, my heart is stirred for you, but like I don't really know if I can help you, even though we probably can, right? And then John says, so don't just talk about it. Like, don't just talk about loving someone, but be about it, right? Like, talk is cheap. If you speak without any intention of acting, then our words are empty and our credibility just goes out the window. Right? If you want to have credibility, if you want to have a platform of influence, then when you say you love someone, when you say you want to help, then actually love them and help them. When you say you're going to pray for someone, actually pray for someone. Like, build that credibility by doing what you say you're going to do. And the whole point of all of this in this little section here is so that we'll love like Jesus. Like, that's the point. How did Jesus love? He was never concerned with himself. He was never concerned with his well-being. He was only ever concerned. Now, Jesus didn't have like means to give, right? He didn't have material possessions. In fact, he said it. I don't have a place to lay my head. I don't have a home. I don't have a house, right? Like, if you want to follow me, you got to give everything up. Because we're just going through the region and we're preaching, but we don't have a lot of things, right? Like, we maybe have a pair of clothes and some sandals, but like, we don't have I'm not lugging a suitcase along with me. And Jesus lived that way. It was always about other people, always others minded, always looking to meet the needs of other people. Now, does this discount making sure that you and your family are okay? Not at all. Like, you need to make sure that's a priority, right? Like, Jesus' family was his disciples, and he made sure that they had food, right? The miracles, and he would find houses when they would travel for people to take care of them when they were there. So, yes, he looked after his own. So don't hear me say that you don't look out for your own. But if we're not thinking of others as well, then we're not living and loving like Jesus. And here's the other thing, too, is that Jesus did it willingly. Right? It wasn't like God said, get down there and do this. Like, Jesus did it willingly. He wanted to do it. He struggled with that. We saw that in the end, right? He's going, listen, I know I need to do this, but like, if there's another way, like, provide another way. But God, if this is the only way, like, your will be done, right? I'll do it because I know this is what needs to be done. But even Jesus, you see, wrestles with this, like, is there another way? Like, is there, and he's like, but this is it for me, right? Like, I'm going to follow what God says to do because I'm willing to be sacrificed. I'm willing to die, right? And it's kind of like, it's like Jesus was, he's not like a kid taking out the trash, right? Remember this whole like illustration, maybe you've heard this, where it's like, you tell your kid to take out the trash and they do it grumbling the whole way. Like, I can't believe you're making me take out this stupid trash. And I'm just, and they're like dragging it along the floor and like coffee spilling out. And they take it out and like, I did it. I took out the trash. Like, that's not love. That's not obedience. That's like, I'm doing it out of an obligation because I have to. And if I don't do it, I'm going to be punished. But instead, when your kid's like, yeah, man, I'll take the trash out, if that ever would happen, gladly, like skipping along, taking the trash. But they go out and it's like, no, I'm doing this because I love you. Like, I want to please you. I want to be obedient to you. So I'm going to take the trash out, and there you go, man. Like, I got some joy in that. Maybe that was a horrible illustration, because has anyone had a kid take the trash out and they're like, I love taking the trash out. Oh, please let me do it again. All right. But that's not Jesus, right? Like, he's willing, and he's not doing it. He's not dragging his feet to the cross going, do I really have to? Like, no, man, I want to do it because I know this is what needs to be done, but I love so much that I'm willing to the point of death. And this is Jesus. This is who we're supposed to love like. And we see a really good description of this, by the way, in Deuteronomy. Here's what it says in Deuteronomy, okay? If there is a poor man among your brothers in any of the towns of the land that the Lord your God is giving you, do not be hard-hearted or tight-fisted toward your poor brother. Rather, be open-handed and freely lend him whatever he needs. Be careful not to harbor this wicked thought. The 7th year, the year for canceling debts, is near, so that you do not show ill will toward the needy brother and give him nothing. He may then appeal to the Lord against you, and you will be found guilty of sin. In other words, what is saying, Moses is saying, or God is saying, but Moses wrote it down for us, is don't look and go, oh, the year of debt canceling is near, so I'm not going to do it now because I'm not going to have a very big debt to cancel towards you, right? Like, the attitude is like, I want to lend you something when I have 7 years to work off, for you to work off the repayment. Like, that's not the right attitude, right? Like, yeah, I'm going to give you this, but just know the interest is due back. Like, that's what he's saying. Like, don't look at it and go, I'm going to get something back from this. Just lend, open-handed, live open-handed and freely with whatever you had. Another good description in James 2:15. Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to him, go, I wish you well, keep warm and be well fed, but does nothing about the physical needs, what good is that? Like, oh, I'm so hungry. Man, I'll pray for you. I hope you find some food somewhere. Go on your way. That's not what it is, right? We need to be a people of action. We need to be a people aware of the needs of those around us. By the way, John's speaking specifically here of the brothers and sisters. Okay, he's speaking of those who are fellow believers. He's speaking of those who are part of the fellowship here in this book, in this young church. And so this is what we need to think about first. We'll get to like the outside of the church in a minute, but like John is speaking specifically about other believers. So looking at other believers and saying, you need, I'm going to live open-handed. This is what James is saying as well, right? The brothers, the sisters. So I want to circle back to all this, but while John is specifically talking about fellow believers, we will get to the principles of outside the church because I think that's important as well. But number 4, this is where that weird random transition statement was meant to go. Love is an obedient response to God. Number 4, okay? Love is an obedient response to God, verses 19 through 23. Now, I want to read this again, and it can be confusing, so I'm going to try to really make it simple, and it's not long to simplify it, but let's read it. And there's a lot kind of in here. If we're not careful, it just kind of becomes kind of confusing. But verses 19 through 24, or 23. By this we shall know that we are of the truth and reassure our hearts before him. For whenever our heart condemns us, God is greater than our heart, and he knows everything. Beloved, if our heart does not condemn us, we have confidence before God, and whatever we ask, we receive from him, because we keep his commandments and do what pleases him. And this is his commandment, that we believe in the name of his Son, Jesus Christ, and love one another just as he has commanded us. So again, kind of a bit difficult if you just read it and breeze right through it. So let's kind of focus in here on what John is saying. So he says, by this, that's how he starts it, right? By this we shall know. Well, by what, right? By this. Previously, he talks about loving in deed and truth. So by this, by us loving in deed, by us living out our love through action, that will reassure our hearts before God. So if I'm living and loving in a way that's not just talk, but I'm actually like helping and meeting the needs of others, this is going to reassure my heart, give me confidence in my heart before God. As children of God, I can stand before him, or a child of God, stand before him and go, look, I did this, and I can have confidence in that. But when he says our heart condemns us in the matter of actively meeting the needs of others, right, specifically that, we remember that God is greater than our hearts. So what does it mean that our hearts condemn us? Commentators would say that John is talking about meanness of our heart. This is like what a lot of commentators said, which is so funny because it seems like such a kind of an elementary word, meanness. Like, don't be mean. But really, he's saying the meanness of our heart. When we look at someone and go, you know, hey, I wish you well, go on. Or, I wish I could help you, and you really could, but you kind of, tell them you can't. Or you say you'll help and you don't. Like, whatever that is, he calls that meanness of our hearts. Our hearts condemn us when we see a need and don't meet it, right? So my heart, the meanness shows when I don't meet the need. Our selfishness, our apathy shine through, right? That's how our heart condemns us. But God is greater than our hearts even. So even when we don't meet the needs, even when our heart condemns us, God is greater than that, because God is always kind, God is always loving, God always sees the needs of his people. And so we can rest assured that even when we as believers struggle to live that out, we have a Father that gives us strength and convicts us and motivates us towards helping. So even when our hearts are going, I really wish I could, but you're struggling with that, how do I, or can I really, or should I really? And we go, God, you can pray, God, like, please not help my unbelief, but like help me here. Like, give me the desire, give me the willingness, because then it says whatever you ask of him, he'll give you, right? So right away he says, look, if you're struggling with this in your heart, just pray to God and he's going to give you the motivation, the courage, the discernment, the wisdom to help. So that's what it means when it says your heart condemns you, but God is greater. So ask of him and he will give you the strength to help. It's pretty cool when you kind of wrap it all up into what John is saying contextually. And then it says when we keep his commandments, when we love one another sacrificially, we do what pleases him, we abide in him and he in us. And this is the evidence of our abiding, that we love one another. And so then it comes full circle from the beginning. So there's the 4 kind of pieces of love. Now I want to take this and I want to kind of bring it into two different realms, and then we'll wrap up. So a couple minutes, worship team, you guys can head up here for communion. But like I mentioned before, okay, John is speaking specifically here to believers, speaking specifically to the brothers and sisters, followers of Jesus. Now, one of our values here at Family Church, we talk about our values often, but one of our values is what we call missional community. Missional community, right? That's kind of 2 different pieces to what we want our city groups to accomplish. So missional would be outward focused, community would be like inward focused. So it's kind of the best of both. We want our city groups to be, a small group of people that love each other, that live this out with each other, but also look outward on mission to reach their specific neighborhoods. So missional community. We have that as a value listed on our website because we want that to be really true of who we are and what our city groups accomplish. And we've been talking about them for a few weeks. We launched them this past Wednesday like we talked about, and really we created them with a few things in mind. One of them is the long-term goal of church planting, but when we first started dreaming these things up, we went to Acts 2, and we looked at what this early church looked like, right? So flip over to Acts 2, if you will, Acts 2, 42 through 47, and this again will be on the screen as well, but Acts 2, 42 through 47, and this is a pretty familiar passage in kind of the church planting world and the church world in general, but here's what it is, right? The fellowship of the believers, what were they doing when they first started having church? They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers. And awe came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. Here it is. All who believed were together, had all things in common. They were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God, having favor with all people, and the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved. So they were so devoted to one another that they were selling their possessions, right? Like we have an attic full of stuff. We moved like 6 months ago. We haven't touched these boxes. We probably go through those and sell some stuff. I don't know. Maybe we should. Just don't touch my childhood stuff. I got a bunch of trophies in there, right? I think I actually got rid of the trophies. Maybe. But anyways, they were selling their possessions. Why? So that they could have the resources to meet the needs of fellow believers, those within their church community, right? This is the idea of missional living, right? Like selling, being on mission for one another in a community of believers. And another passage, and I don't know that we have the time to go through the whole thing, but another passage of Scripture that takes this and adds urgency to it is this warning that we see in Matthew 25 of the sheep and the goats. You guys know that judgment. Basically, I'll kind of paraphrase it, but it says that in the end, the final judgment, Jesus will separate what he calls the sheep and the goats. And the sheep will be on his right and the goats on his left. And the sheep are those that Jesus says, you saw me hungry and you fed me. You saw me thirsty and you gave me something to drink. You saw me naked and you clothed me. And you saw me in prison and you visited me. And the sheep said, when did we do that for you, Lord? When did we actually do that? And he said, as much as you did this to the least of these, my brothers, so you did it to me. And then on the other side with the goats, he says, depart from me, I never knew you, because I was hungry and you didn't give me food. I was thirsty and you didn't give me a drink. I was naked and you didn't clothe me. I was in prison and you did not visit me. Depart. And they're like, wait a minute. When did we ever forego serving you, Lord? And he's like, well, you never did it to the least of these. You never did it to those who were in need, so you didn't do it to me or for me, right? So he separates. That's the final judgment. That's what actually happens, right? There's this separation, right, of the chaff. And so what he says in the midst there is he says, my brothers. Now, this is one of the passages, honestly, that's one of the most misinterpreted in all of Scripture, because we like to take that passage and go, justice for the poor and the oppressed, justice. Let's get out into the world and let's go, meet the needs of those who are in need. But that specific passage, believe it or not, Jesus is only talking about believers, meeting the needs of brothers and sisters, meeting the needs of believers. So that passage, sheep and goats, is actually Jesus talking about those within the church. So you weren't meeting the needs of those in your community of believers. You were not meeting the needs of your brothers and sisters. You were not meeting the needs of those that are followers of mine that were walking in this life with you. But we like to take it out to the world, right? But Jesus actually is talking specifically about fellow believers. In this final judgment, the righteous were engaged so much so in the needs of others, they didn't even realize they were doing it. When did we do that, Jesus? Well, you did it because you were serving the least of these. So it needs to be so natural for us, so like just part of who we are and our identity that we don't even realize that we're doing it. It just comes natural to us. Like we hear a need and it's like not even a second thought. Yeah, I'm going to meet that need. Yeah, of course I'll help you. Like that's our first thing should be like, yes, I'm going to help you, but I need to figure out how. Like I need to figure out how I'm going to do that. But yes, I'm going to help you, and we're going to make sure that your needs are met. So this passage in Matthew 25, it doesn't mean that we exclude those who are not believers as we meet the needs of those who are hungry, thirsty, naked, and in prison. In fact, in Luke 6, we see Jesus saying that we need to meet the needs of those as well. He says, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you, and as you wish that others would do to you, do so to them. If you love those who love you, what benefit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what benefit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. But, here it is, love your enemies and do good and lend, expecting nothing in return. And your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High, for he is kind to the ungrateful and the evil. Be merciful even as your Father is merciful. So love your enemies and do good to them. Lend to them. Meet the needs of them as well. So it's not just those within our fellowship, but it's also those who are not followers of Jesus. Jesus said it himself. So wrapping up, you guys can come up. We're gonna get into communion here, but this is a challenge for us as a church, right? If we are truly children of God, right, like the marker of a true follower of his, if we are truly children of God, if we're really his disciples, then we will be compelled to help those in need. If we really are his followers. Like that's one of the markers that John is saying. Like look to those who are loving in a way that meets the needs of others. And that's a marker of someone who's a child of God, someone who's a follower of his. Why? Because our genuineness of faith, right, is marked by that. A love that sacrifices much, but a love that is not concerned with gaining anything in return. And that, man, if that's a marker of our church, and the world sees that, and they see that this is how we operate, this is how we love, you know, we're gonna start doing some outreach and some local outreach projects and things like that, partnering with some organizations, getting out there and doing things like that. We want to be known as a church, as a people that loves sacrificially and unconditionally, meets the needs of those who are in need. Sometimes I get in trouble because I think I'm so quick without the wisdom and discernment often to help others that Jade's like, just take a step back and let's just look at the situation and like discern and have some wisdom here before you just throw a bunch of money at that person. So there's wisdom in taking pause and thinking through how you're going to help that person. But we need to be of the nature of like, I just want to help, whatever that looks like, right? So let's be a church, let's be a people that lives that way, that loves sacrificially and unconditionally. Let me pray, and then we'll just spend a few moments in reflection, and then we'll take communion together. So God, thank you for this word, and thank you for this passage that is so practical and so challenging and just so real for us and how we're meant to live. And so I pray that we wouldn't overlook it, but maybe there's some conviction here this morning of like, man, I've been given some opportunities lately, but I haven't met the needs. I haven't jumped all over to try to help that person that was in need. Maybe there are people here that live that way, that are generous with the things that you've entrusted to them. But just make us all aware of those around us. Let us be intentional with getting to know people here in this church first so that we can meet the needs here in our body, but then also getting to know our neighbors and our coworkers and those that may not know you so we can know how to meet the needs of them as well. Ultimately, God, we just want to shine your love, shine your light. So make us a people that does that so that others see you in and through us, all for your glory and all for your kingdom. And that's why we want to do it. So thank you again for this word. And as we now reflect in just a moment of quiet, God, just stir our hearts and speak. Use your spirit to speak into the hearts of those here. And again, we love you and we're so thankful for this. In your son's name, amen. Just take a minute or two.